Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Big Apple Blitz. What's going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how's it going, my friend?
It's going all right. I'm excited for tonight's game. I think it's going to be a tough one for the Giants at home against the Dallas Cowboys. But if there's one thing that's got me excited, it's Malik Nabers' first opportunity to play on prime time under those bright lights of MetLife Stadium. That gets me excited. If we think back, I mean, we've made so many comparisons between Nabers and OBJ. And if we think of Odell's first time on prime time, well, that's when a superstar was born. So, and against the same team, the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm excited. I think it'll be fun. It's going to be a tough one, like I said, but nevertheless, should be a fun one.
Absolutely. It's a game day for Anthony, which is always exciting. Last week, it was a game day for the New York Jets. Jets won in prime time on Thursday. Hopefully for the New York Giants, it is the same thing. Before we hop into it, I'm going to toss a fantasy question your way from our guy Ike in the comments. Should I start Singletary in the flex spot? Your early thoughts on if Devin Singletary should be starting in fantasy this week?
Yeah, so usually I would probably say no, just because I don't trust anyone on the Giants offense other than Malik Nabers to consistently put up fantasy points. But I'm going to say yes this time because the Dallas Cowboys have the 32nd ranked run defense in the NFL. They haven't been able to stop anybody on the ground. And Singletary has looked pretty solid over the past couple of weeks. So I actually think that if the Giants are going to be competitive in this game, it's going to be because they're running the ball well, and it's going to be because Devin Singletary is having himself a night. So I like Singletary in this one. I would absolutely start him at least in the flex spot.
There we go. Love that. So for the New York Giants in this game, obviously both of these teams 1-2. I would say very different expectations for the Cowboys going into this year versus the Giants going into this year. But what's your feel for this one? Vibes feel completely different. Like Giants coming off a big win, a surprise win against Cleveland, where Dallas, it feels like there's so much pressure on them to win this game.
I think there's pressure on both of these teams because, yes, the Giants got their first win, but they got it against Cleveland, who hasn't been great. And they need to prove that it wasn't just a mirage because they looked terrible in week 1. They looked like they were showing signs of life in week 2, but still somehow blew it. And then in week 3, finally, they put it all together. They get a solid win. Was that just a 1 week, blip, or are they building momentum and going to start putting together some wins on this upcoming tough schedule? That's the question mark for the Giants. And I think there is a lot of pressure because let's say that what happened last year when we played Dallas on primetime, that 40-0 collapse. If that happens again, I think that we're back to talking about Brian Daboll being on the hot seat like we were 2 weeks ago. So I think there's plenty of pressure on both of these teams, but you're right in the sense that there is momentum building for the Giants. Meanwhile, the Cowboys feel like they're in a rut and they feel like they might not reach their potential this season. So I think for Dallas, losing to a Giants team that you've swept over the last 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons, I think it is. You beat up on the Giants every single year. If you end up losing somehow in MetLife Stadium to this Giants team, I think that could actually send things crumbling down for Dallas. So a really important game for both teams.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, for the Giants, they put up an unfortunate performance in week 1 in front of their home fans, then back-to-back games on the road here. But going back home after a win, and it's 2 things for me stick out. One, it's a primetime game. That those games feel differently, even if you're going into a game with not a ton of expectation. But it's the Giants' first divisional game as well. And actually, strike that. Sorry, it's the second divisional game. Washington's obviously in the division. But my point was going to be the Dallas and Eagles games. Those feel different. Washington, yes, they're in the Giants division, but it doesn't have as much juice as a Giants Cowboys or a Giants Eagles game to me. So I just feel like that cranks up the intensity even more for this one.
It does crank up the intensity, but unfortunately, over the past, I want to say 6 years, which may or may not be coincidental with the arrival of a certain player, the intensity has not been there for the New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys, and they have lost the overwhelming majority of those games, especially the ones on prime time. Listen, I didn't say his name there. I avoided saying it. Now I'm going to say it. Daniel
Dexter
Jones
Lawrence.
has the worst.
Oh.
Yeah. Daniel Jones has the worst primetime win percentage of any quarterback as a starter in NFL history. The only way that we can justify to maintain him as the starter going forward is if he starts to win big games. And that's not just, oh, but he won that one playoff game against the Vikings. Okay, sure. What has he done on any other big occasion? Primetime games, rivalry games. He loses like all of them. It's time to start winning those games. You've got Malik Neighbors. The offensive line has been better. Brian Daboll's calling plays. All those factors that we've considered for all of these games. Now you've got Dallas, a struggling Dallas Cowboys team, coming to New York to face you in your home stadium. Daniel Jones, get a goddamn primetime win. You're long overdue.
Oh, this is a really interesting stat that I'm sure you're going to really love to see. Ready for this? It's worst primetime record since 1970 among quarterbacks with 10 plus starts. Daniel Jones, 1-12, 0.77 win percentage. You have Andy Dalton in there at 6-21, Jeff George 5-17, Ken Anderson 3-10, and I believe if you scroll down, it gives even more. Daniel Jones lost by 21, lost by 19. There's some tight games in here though. In that 2020, 2021 era, it was like, hey, you were kind of in the mix in these primetime games. That Commanders lost by 1. That one really sticks out still in my mind.
Yeah. No, you're right, though. There were some competitive games in that stretch, but look at the most recent ones. 2023, there was 3 of them, and none of them were close. If you go to 2022, still 1 possession or more. There was that tight stretch there, and unfortunately, that was 2-3 head coaches ago. We're talking Pat Shurmur and Joe Judge had this Giants team competitive, and that's why not only do I call Daniel Jones into question for the way that this team has performed for the past couple of seasons, I also do call Brian Daboll into question. I mean, honestly, you pulled it up there, 0.077 win percentage. He's not even at 0.100. That's unbelievable. 1 primetime win in his career is actually crazy. But like I said, I'm calling Daboll into question too, because the Giants, when they lose lately, they're not like competitive losses. I mean, week 2 was, but 2023 season, when they were losing last year, they were like getting blown out every time. And I do think back to, if I want to go as far back as when Tom Coughlin got, he resigned, but basically got fired. During that era of Tom Coughlin, where he was clearly on his way out, the Giants were losing a lot of games, but they were competitive in all of those games. And then when Pat Shurmur came in, they were still competitive in those losses. And even under the Joe Judge era, there were some competitive losses. Now under Daboll, when the Giants lose, all of their problems just snowball into oblivion and they get blown out. That needs to be course corrected as well here. So if the Giants are going to lose tonight, which I understand is a probability, they are the underdogs against Dallas, I need it to at least be a close game for me to continue to feel confident in the direction of this team. I mean, not that I don't know why I said continue, but for me to start to feel confident in the direction of this team.
Yeah, I mean, as you were talking about, I decided to pull it up. There's a lot, 40-0 against Dallas in the opener on September 10th was awful. San Francisco, they kind of were in that game for a bit, and then in the second half, San Francisco pulled away. The Seattle game was atrocious. They lost by 15 to the Dolphins. Isn't that the game where Daniel Jones got hurt against? That was against the Dolphins last year, or the first time he got hurt. The Bills game, that one they probably should have won. That was a little bit of a wild one.
They should have won that one. That was a great game by Tyrod Taylor, though.
It was. The Jets Giants sent the sport back 57 years. That was atrocious. Dallas loss was a big loss, obviously, as well. They won 3 games in a row. That was Tommy DeVito time, though, wasn't it?
Tommy Cutlets, baby.
And then, things went off the rails again a little bit towards the end here.
Yeah. Weren't close against the Saints. Were close against the Eagles and the Rams, and then not against, or they beat the Eagles in that last game. That was Tyrod Taylor in those final 4 games. But again, look at that Las Vegas Raiders game. I understand Daniel Jones got injured in that game. It was his return game, too. That's the one where he tore his ACL. But he wasn't even close to making plays in that first half before he got hurt. And then they obviously played Dallas on Thanksgiving last year, and that was just embarrassing. And they played them on Thanksgiving again this year. or maybe it wasn't Thanksgiving last year, but they still played them again on prime time, and Tommy DeVito played in that one. He didn't play well. So just I'm tired of getting embarrassed by the Cowboys every single time we play them. Like, it's just ridiculous. I have a lot of these Cowboys players on my fantasy teams. My weekly mention of my big Dynasty 20-man NFL Sim League. I've got Dak and I've got CD. Anytime they're playing the Giants, I know that I'm eating good and I'm getting a win this week in fantasy. I don't like that feeling, okay? I don't like every time that I have Dallas players going up against the Giants, I feel confident that my fantasy team is going to win. So I would like the Giants to start being competitive in these games. And, that kind of does lead into a greater conversation, though. I really want to talk about the secondary today because we kind of touched on Deonte Banks in a previous episode, but we got some more stats on that I posted on my social media. But I also want to highlight the fact that CeeDee Lamb hasn't necessarily popped off so far this season the way that, he's expected to. He's had some great moments, but he hasn't had one of those statement games. This might be that statement game. The Giants are down Drew Phillips, their starting nickel cornerback, the rookie who's played really well, and Adoree Jackson, who's one of their rotational starters. So with two starters out in the secondary and Nick McLeod returning from an injury, this Giants secondary is more vulnerable than ever. And CeeDee Lamb is coming to town, and CeeDee Lamb loves to score touchdowns against the New York Giants. So I am very concerned with the Giants' ability to match up against CeeDee Lamb going into this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you because looking at the Cowboys stats through their first few games this year, they aren't running the ball well, which isn't shocking with Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott in Big 2024 as their two running backs. You're averaging Rico 3.8 yards per attempt, Zeke 3.3, Deuce Vaughn 2.9. Like, they're very much so struggling to get anything going on the ground. So they're going to throw the crap out of the ball. Dak leads the NFL in passing attempts with 122 through 3 games. So not a math guy. I never really claimed to be, but let's do some quick math on that. The paced out over per game is that can't be right. 122 divided by 3 is 41 passing attempts per game. So I would expect the Cowboys to come out throwing. So they're going to need a big performance from this secondary and the pass rush, which had a really good game a week ago. They're going to need that to continue in this game against Dallas if they have any shot, I think.
No, absolutely. I mean, listen, the Giants need to make sure that this game is won in the trenches for them. And that goes on both sides of the ball. Like, they have to make sure that the ball is coming out of Dak Prescott's hands quickly so that he's not able to wait all day for CeeDee Lamb to break open, because he's going to break open against this vulnerable secondary, as I mentioned. And then on the other side of the ball, the Giants' run blocking needs to be great because they need to get Singletary going. Because if they try and drop back 40 times tonight and they try and pass protect against DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, well, Daniel Jones is going to get hit a whole bunch. He's probably going to throw some picks, and then the game is going to get out of hand. So this is the most classic win in the trenches football game. That's how the Giants need to control it. And then back into the secondary, Deonte Banks, we talked about it last week, and you made a comparison to Sauce Gardner, saying, sometimes Sauce gets criticism for not getting his hands on the football as much as he should. Deonte Banks has not been getting his hands on the football at all through 3 weeks. But I keep mentioning he's letting up a lot of these plays, but he's right there. So close to making the play, just doesn't get his head turned around. I got those stats if you want to pull them up. I'll post them on my social media. His lockdown percentage, according to Pro Football Focus, is very high relative to the rest of the NFL. And lockdown percentage is defined as how close a cornerback or defender is to a wide receiver at the catch point and how often he's letting them get open. Deonte Banks has been right there. The stats are showing it up. It's not just the film and the broadcast angles showing it. The advanced analytics are showing that he is right there on most of these plays, defending the opposing wide receivers. In week 3, he was in the top 13 in lockdown percentage while going up against Amari Cooper. Still surrendered 2 touchdowns and a bunch of receptions, but he was right there making the plays. And that's kind of my thing. Banks is going to have to defend CeeDee Lamb a lot tonight. Will he be able to get his head turned around and make some plays on those balls, or is he going to let up a bunch of contested catches? I'm not sure. But I do think that there is an indication here that Deonte Banks is really a step away from a breakout. He's just turning the corner. He's just not quite there yet, but he's very close.
Yeah, I was sitting here looking at the stats, not realizing the graphic was covering it. So that's my bad. But yeah, I mean his numbers, like that's a good opportunity in week 3. And that goes to show you. So this over the course of 2024, where does that Where's he on this one? Oh, okay, he's down here, but that's still top half of the league. Like, I think he's better than what maybe the stats have shown, which I think is the point that you're eventually trying to get to. And like for me, I know it was only 1 year last year, but still, Deonte Banks has shown me significantly more good than bad through his first 20 games as a pro. So I'm comfortable and confident that he's going to bounce back. This week is tough, as you said. Dallas is going to throw the ball. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best receivers in the NFL. So maybe we don't see that like breakout this week, but I expect to continue to see him get better as the year goes on.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's funny enough, you said through the first 20 games of his career, this is game 19 for him tonight. He's not even at 20. So I think a lot of Giants fans are so quick to hit this panic button and be like, oh man, Banks, he's struggling. He's not getting his hands on the ball. Sure, he's not. But listen, he's playing in the secondary where immediately as a rookie, he was thrust in as the number one cornerback. Huge spotlight on him. He has to guard all of the best receivers in the NFL. It's not easy to do as a rookie. Usually you want that guy to be CB2 and work his way to CB1. He's been forced to play into a role that he probably wasn't fully prepared for. He was a raw prospect, but he's putting it together is kind of my point. You're right. Like, the stats don't tell the full story. I think that he is close in coverage. He just needs to make a couple more plays on the ball. And question from Rico the Pup, is Banks going to follow Lamb into the slot? He is not. Deonte Banks does not travel into the slot, and that's why I am concerned about CD in this game, because our slot cornerback, Drew Phillips, the rookie, who I love and has been playing great, is out with a calf injury. So we're probably getting Cordell Flat on CeeDee Lamb. And that absolutely scares me, because every time Cordell Flat has had to match up against CeeDee Lamb, he's gotten torched. So CeeDee Lamb could be a game breaker in this one.
Yeah, I would like to see the Giants win this game. An upset win would be awesome for the second week in a row. But this is a spot, and you did mention that you have fantasy implications on this one, so maybe it won't hurt as much. But I think Dak and CD are like, I would think this is a very, very big CeeDee Lamb game. I would be surprised if he's under 100 yards.
I would be shocked. And honestly, I'm no diss to my Giants. I still think they can win this game, but I'm probably going to put together a little CeeDee Lamb parlay, take his receptions, yards, and touchdown in this one.
Yeah, I don't blame you on that one at all. He has 218 receiving yards through the first 3 games. So he's pacing out for, what is that yards per game wise? 72.7, which is on the lower side for him over the last couple of years. Yeah. He had 90 against New Orleans. Again, I just think this is a spot where he gets over 100 as a really, really big day, because of, we know how much they like to line him up in the slot. And that's, if we're talking about it here on this show, clearly we know Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys, like, they know it's an advantage for them as well to get him working in the slot and not have him line up outside as much. So, like, again, I think the Giants will be fine containing the Dallas Cowboys running backs. If they get pressure like they did a week ago, that might change things. But again, for me in this game, I'm looking for both Dak and CeeDee Lamb, those two guys in particular, to have pretty big numbers.
Yeah, and I'm double checking here, but I think it's 2 rookies starting on the offensive line for Dallas in this one. Yeah, Tyler Guyton at left tackle. That's the guy that I'm going to circle, because he's struggled. You know, he's a rookie out of Oklahoma, and he hasn't necessarily been too great so far. And Cooper Beebe at center. That is the one that gets me excited here. I mean, you've got a rookie center going up against Dexter Lawrence. Sexy Dexy got to eat tonight. I mean, he eats every week. You know, he's always putting up crazy numbers, but going up against a rookie in Cooper Beebe, I think you have to expect Dexter Lawrence to have a big game here. And if he's able to do that and he's soaking up those double teams, then you're leaving Tyler Guyton one-on-one with a Kayvon Thibodeaux or a Brian Burns. Now, if it were me, I would put Brian Burns on him and just let him work him all day long. Burns has been great so far this season. The stats haven't told the full story there either, but on film, he's been making a lot of plays. That is the key here, is if you can get Dexter Lawrence pushing the middle and then get those one-on-one opportunities between a rookie tackle and Brian Burns, you can get that pressure on Dak Prescott, force the ball out of his hands quickly, maybe force him to throw some turnovers. That's really going to be the key here. Again, like I said, this is a trenches game for the Giants, whether we're talking pass rush, whether we're talking running the football well, or protecting Daniel Jones from the Cowboys pass rush. It's all going to be in the trenches, and that's going to be the way that they can be competitive and hopefully win this game.
Follow-up question from Rico, which, as a Jake Ferguson fantasy owner, I am very interested in your thoughts on this. What about Jake Ferguson versus the linebackers and safeties? He did pretty well against the Ravens, though most of it was in garbage time. What's your take on the Cowboys tight end situation going up against the Giants defense?
Many years ago, Giants versus tight ends was always the matchup. The Giants would just get destroyed no matter who they were facing, especially Dallas Cowboys legend Jason Witten. Hey, off topic here, kind of, but Jason Witten. Do you remember that one game where he had 2 injured ankles, an injured arm, and an injured knee, and he still went out there and put up like 70 yards against the Giants?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but that's like just so on brand for. I like Jason Witten a ton in his career. I know, obviously, division rival, and
I hate him.
All that was probably such a pain in the ass to go up against, but man, that was just him though. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, I just remember seeing the injury report, and I was like, he's got how many injuries? And then he put up like 70 yards and a touchdown on us. I could not believe that, but I don't think something like that is going to happen tonight. Like, yeah, Jake Ferguson is a good player. And Dak likes to work his tight ends. But honestly, the Giants linebacker group and safety group, I feel good about. Like, I think Tyler Nubin and Jason Pinnock match up well with Ferguson. And I think that the linebackers of Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden, and mixing in here as a big nickel / linebacker, Isaiah Simmons, the Giants really shouldn't get burned by tight ends too much this year, especially this week against Ferguson, considering Isaiah Simmons is going to play more because of the injury to Drew Phillips. So, and I really like the way that Simmons matches up against a lot of these tight ends. So I'm not super concerned about Ferguson. In fact, as a Ferguson fantasy owner for yourself, Matt, I probably wouldn't bank on him to put up a lot of points this week.
I don't have a tight end on my bench currently. So I don't know if I'm going to rock with it. He's projected for 10.4 fantasy points in this matchup. I don't know if he gets that. He didn't play. He had a quiet week 1, didn't play week 2. Was very good against Baltimore in week 3. I don't know. He got me second guessing things. Maybe I might have to make a couple roster moves.
I think you might have to make a change here. I'm not crazy about Jake Ferguson going into this one.
All right. So let's get to prediction time. You know the drill. I'm going to put you on the spot. We got to give a score prediction. So how much did the Giants lose by tonight, Anthony? I'm sorry.
10 points.
I
think it was by 10 points. It was mean, but I'm going to be realistic. This is the show where I can be realistic. Over on Fireside Giants, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to go record my game preview and predictions for that one, and I'm going to predict the Giants win. But over here, unbiased, I'm going to predict the Giants lose 30-20.
Okay. That's kind of where I'm at. I think Dallas wins by a touchdown. I'm going to have it 27-20. I think because of the offensive line injuries that Dallas is dealing with and the fact that there's no run game for them, I think the Giants keep it close for a little bit, but as great as Malik Nabers is, and I think he gets in the end zone tonight, I just don't think the Giants have the juice to keep up and get into the high 20s in points, even against the weaker Dallas defense right now. So I'll go 27-20. What's the score prediction on Fireside Giants? Can we get both here?
It's probably like 27-24 Giants, some narrow victory for them. Probably something like that.
Look at this.
No, I can't be though, because I can't bank on the kicker to win the game. It's Greg Joseph, and I don't trust that man to win this game. So it's going to have to be something that doesn't end with like a 3-point margin. It'll have to be a 4-point margin of some sort, 25-21 or something.
Yeah, something gross. I like it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, let's transition and get into the New York Jets, who host the Denver Broncos at home on Sunday. I'm pumped up. I'm going to this game, Anthony, and I think you've gotten to know me pretty well since we've done this show and worked together in the past, previewing Jets Giants in the preseason last year and the regular season last year. I really think that, like, I feel like I'm usually a very reserved guy. Like, I try to call it like it is. I think this is a really good spot for the Jets. I think we might be in blowout territory this week against the Denver Broncos. They got their win out of the way in week 3 against Todd Bowles and the Bucks. Knocked me out of my Survivor Pool League. Thanks a lot, Baker Mayfield, Todd Bowles and company down there in Tampa Bay. But Jets offense started to click in week 3 against New England. Kind of a similar spot, I feel like, for Denver. They don't have a ton offensively. They're dealing with a young quarterback. their run game isn't really all that great, so they throw with their young quarterback a lot. Jets are third in the NFL right now in team pressures. There's just a lot that is pointing Jets to me in this one. Am I too optimistic here?
No, I'm with you. I think the Jets are winning this one. It's the return of Zach Wilson. I don't think we see Zach Wilson on the field,
No.
but I'm excited for that nonetheless. He'll be back in MetLife Stadium. That's fun. But I do think, this Jets team matches up well against a bad Broncos team. They got their win last week. You're right. They got it out of the way. The Buccaneers, they absolutely choked that one. But I don't think that this is a good Broncos team. And I think this is a very good New York Jets team, at least on paper. When you're looking at the roster, the way the two stack up, I mean, this should be a win for the Jets. I'm totally with you. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be major blowout just because, we saw the blowout from the Jets last week, but it was a short week against New England. And do they have week-to-week blowout potential? I'm not sure. Sometimes that's a little bit difficult for a team to maintain. But coming off of a long break here for the Jets, they've got a little bit of extra rest, fully healthy. Maybe they go out there and they hit the ground running. I'm definitely thinking this is going to be a nice one for Aaron Rodgers to get busy because I think this Broncos defense is really struggling.
Yeah, I'm with you. Looking at, I was pulling up as you were talking. I was going to pull up Bo Nix's numbers, and he was more efficient. I don't know. That's probably the nice way to say it against Tampa Bay. Didn't throw a touchdown pass, but 216 passing yards, 6 yards per attempt, 85 passer rating. Again, didn't turn it over. Did have a rushing touchdown, so that's an added bonus. That's maybe something that the Jets need to watch because honestly, Bo Nix is their most efficient runner. Javonte Williams hasn't been really all that efficient, and Jaleel McLaughlin, same thing. I think the two of them are averaging, like both of them are averaging 2.2 yards per attempt. Like it's disgusting. So in the run game, it's a lot of Bo Nix, but his first 2 games in the league, 4 turnovers in his first 2 games, 4 interceptions. They were not pretty interceptions as well. He was very check down Charlie in week 1. 138 passing yards on 42 attempts that's hard to do. So I don't want to be the brash, overconfident guy. That's usually not how I am, but I just think matchup wise with how the Jets defensive line has been performing better week over week. They're getting like DJ Reed has a little bit of an extra, the 10 days off, a little bit more time to recover. Same with Michael Carter. You might be getting CJ Mosley back as well. I think the defensive line's able to get home and confuse a young quarterback in Bo Nix. And I just don't see this Denver offense being able to do a whole lot this week.
No, me neither. And honestly, looking at those stats that you just pulled up, I cannot believe how much they've asked Bo Nix to throw the ball through the first 3 weeks of the season. He hasn't even had under 35 passing attempts in any of these games. Listen, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Sean Payton, most overrated head coach in NFL history. First of all, he shouldn't be allowed to coach. He should be banned for lifetime for Bountygate. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think a lot of people share that opinion. I hate the guy. I think that he's not that great of a coach. He called one onside kick and they won a game that honestly Peyton Manning, he kind of choked. That's really what happened there. But that's my take on that. And I think that the way that he's managed the first few weeks of the season for Bo Nix has been terrible. And he's pretty much putting him out there to die. And I do like this comment, though, from Rico the Pup here. If it's a blowout, fully expect the put-in Zach chance. I think that Jets fans should start the put-in Zach Wilson chance from the start of the game, just to rattle Bo Nix. Before the ball's even snapped for Bo Nix, put in Zach. Don't make the Broncos fans do it. You guys do it yourself. I think that would be a really fun way to kind of trash talk Bo Nix.
I was going to say, I can promise you, because we discussed this on our show, Talking Jets on Tuesday night, there are at least 85 people in the 300 section that will be chanting it the entire time. Jet fans want like their pound of flesh, so to speak, against Zach Wilson. I don't think he dresses, by the way, because he's been their third quarterback. So if they were to make a switch, it would be Jarrett Stidham, unless like something weird happens in the next few days here. But you have that aspect of it, which again is interesting to point out, Zach Wilson making his return to MetLife Stadium. But also, we know how Aaron Rodgers feels about Nate Hackett. He loves that guy. And Sean Payton threw Nathaniel Hackett under the bus last year. And the Jets were able to beat Denver on the road and kind of like get the last laugh, so to speak. But Rodgers wasn't a part of that. We know Rodgers is a vindictive son of a bitch. So I think he wants to come in there and light it up against Sean Payton for his guy Nate Hackett here too.
I think so too. I think that the vindictive son of a bitch part is really fun, and I haven't even thought of that angle. Trying to get that revenge here for Nathaniel Hackett. Funny enough, and back to the point that you made about the Jets defense getting healthier and getting some pieces back. I mean, you make the point of C.J. Mosley. I do question though. I want to ask you, C.J. Mosley in the lineup, is that an addition or is that a subtraction? Because I know that we've had this conversation a little bit here and there about maybe C.J. Mosley was a little too slow in holding defense back in some ways.
So I'm going to say addition, but here's why. Because I think it will allow them to play more base. They play a lot of nickel, so they don't really have 3 linebackers on the field a ton. But I think this would allow the Jets, especially with Michael Carter dealing with the ankle injury that, Saleh said he's essentially going to deal with all year, which doesn't make me feel all that great. But Jamien Sherwood is very fast. He's a converted safety. Quincy Williams plays at like 225 pounds. Like those two guys can move in coverage and go sideline to sideline in the run game. I think Mosley, he's not someone you want stuck out in coverage, but I still view him as like the brain of this defense. Like I don't think we could understate how important he is as a leader on this defense. And yeah, it looked rough. The first 2 games he played, no denying, it looked really, really bad. He did leave both those 2 games with injury. So like, I think he was trying to tough it out. So I think it just made it look even worse than what it already is likely going to be with him losing a step. But if he is feeling better, and if we do see him this week, I don't think it's going to be at like him playing 100% of the snaps, which is fine. I think it's like, hey, when we're in base, CJ is going to be out here. And I think that's fine for me. I think it's an upgrade.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The element of having your linebacker be the quarterback of the defense, so to speak. And I think that ties into kind of a theme that we've had throughout this episode. There's more than what meets the eye in statistics, right? Like I think that's come up several times here where there's a hidden impact in the game of football. And whether we're talking Deonte Banks earlier or now CJ Mosley, there's that element that you can't quantify through stats. And I think that's what makes him so valuable to this team and makes Banks valuable to his team. And I think that's a really important talking point for both of these Jets and Giants teams as they enter some pivotal matchups.
So last week, Aaron Rodgers threw for, 281 yards, 281 and 2 touchdowns. He has not thrown over 300 yards since December of 2021. And I've seen this tweet come up on the timeline. Way too much. If he hit one more pass, which probably it just looked like they were not on the same page last week, but to Garrett Wilson, he would have went up over 300 last week. I wanted him to get that number so bad. I think he does it this week. I think this is the week they come out throwing early. My fear, though, is because I'm predicting a blowout. We'll get to the score prediction at the end. If they get up to too big of a lead early, they might stop throwing, and we might not see Aaron Rodgers get over 300.
That's possible. And I will say, maybe going against Aaron Rodgers going for 300, I think Pat Surtain is due to bounce back. He's struggled a lot. All these guys I got paid this offseason have struggled for some reason. Brandon Ayuk being one of them, CeeDee Lamb kind of one of them, Dak, I guess. He's played well, but not as great as he should. And Pat Surtain, another example. A lot of these guys that got these big contracts and missed a lot of practice because they were negotiating, whatever it was, haven't been playing well. But I do think Pat Surtain is in line for a bounce back, and that might cause Aaron Rodgers to not go his way as much, not try and pick on him. It might lead to a ground attack for the Jets. I'm actually feeling a ground attack heavy game. I'm not feeling 300 yards from Rodgers. I'm thinking that it's going to be a big Breece Hall, Braylon Allen game.
Okay. I would sign up for that. I think it'd be exciting. Breece Hall, I think, is going to be the guy that they try to run this thing through. As I mentioned, Garrett Wilson and Rodgers don't feel like they're on the same page yet. I think they'll eventually get there. I think there's just too much talent for that to be not to be the case, but good to point out Pat Surtain. For my money, I think him and Sauce Gardner are 1 and 2 in the league, whatever order you want to put them in for corners. That's my take on it. And he played well against the Jets last year, had an unbelievable interception against Zach Wilson, and was Garrett Wilson in coverage that he was with. So I don't expect this to be the game that Garrett Wilson has the breakout, but we did see Tyler Conklin have a really big game on Thursday. And I think we could see that again this week. I think, especially over the middle of the field, the Jets are going to try to pick at the safeties and linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go by PFF grades as, a baseline for indicator of how well a team is playing, I mean, the linebacker core for the Broncos is grading astronomically low right now. They've got a really tough front seven there in their defense. So you're probably going to look at that as a little bit of a reconfirmation for Conklin having another big game. But I'll also mention that their defensive linemen, John Franklin Myers included in that, have all graded really poorly. And I think that ties in to my prediction here of getting Breece Hall and Braylon Allen busy, especially again, kind of bringing up linebackers not playing well. I think Breece Hall has just looked so good as a receiver so far this season. And I think that we can expect him to, again, this week, get a heavy workload in the receiving game while Braylon Allen continues to develop as a rusher between the tackles because he's looked really solid in that regard. So I'm liking a rushing attack this weekend for Breece Hall especially. I think that he's got an opportunity to really pop in this one.
Something we haven't mentioned yet in this game, which again, it feels like it's an added bonus for the Jets here. The Broncos lost Alex Singleton, their middle linebacker. He's led the team in tackles the last 3 years. He had 170 tackles last year, but by the way, I don't know if you saw this story. Supposedly he tore the ACL early in the game and played through it the rest of the way, which is like, that's baller. That's insane. But that's another guy in the linebacker core that's not going to play in this game. And at 170 tackles, usually he's making an impact in the run game. And that might be a spot that the Jets look to attack. Last year, they were atrocious in the run game, the Broncos. That's why they looked to add someone like a John Franklin Myers. And Breece Hall had a really big game against them a year ago. I would not be surprised at all if they went back to those two guys. And now you had Braylon Allen into the mix too, who's looked good through his first 3 games.
Yeah, again, all those factoring in. That's why I'm feeling really good about a rushing attack for the Jets this weekend. And listen, I don't think that takes away from Aaron Rodgers' ability to, throw the rock and put up a bunch of yardage. But I do think that the key here for this Jets team, and honestly, it's been the key for all of these teams around the NFL so far this season. Passing around the league is down. Average passing yards per game is down. Total rushing yards per game is up. So I just think that trend is going to continue. And a lot of it has to do with struggles in offensive line play, which has gotten worse to worse across the NFL year to year. A lot of it has to do with struggles in offensive play calling, which has also gotten worse year to year in the NFL. I think that it's just a lot simpler for teams right now to run the ball, especially in these early weeks of the season. And that's a trend that I don't see ending anytime soon. In fact, I think it continues heavily in both of these games that we're previewing, the Giants versus Cowboys tonight. I think the ground is really the key to this game. And I think that for the Jets beating the Broncos, the key is going to be to get that rushing attack going and let Breece Hall get to work.
Ike comes back in and says, Lazard, 4 touchdowns in 4 games. This guy with Aaron Rodgers, he went from unplayable a year ago with Zach Wilson to like Jerry Rice with Aaron Rodgers. What's going on here?
I think it's chemistry. I think that's really all it is. It's all about chemistry and timing. And I also read a report earlier that I think a couple days ago that Mike Williams is going to get more involved and he's getting integrated further into this lineup for the Jets. And I think that for me ties into the Lazard conversation because what you see between Rodgers and Lazard is, immaculate timing. They look like they've been playing football together for years because they have been. So when they throw those back shoulders or some of those timing routes, the ball is always exactly where Lazard wants it. And it's just there every single time. And we saw one of those back shoulder fades that we previewed all offseason to Mike Williams in the pass game. And now that Mike Williams is going to become more of an element of this offense is only going to get even deadlier and more lethal for opposing teams because as Rodgers just continues to perfect that timing with Lazard making some of these back shoulders and now also Mike Williams. And then you still got Garrett Wilson being an absolute stud over the middle of the field and up the sideline. I do see just room for explosion from this Jets offense across the next few weeks.
I think so too. I think we only see them continue to get better. And, right now they're trending towards a top 10 offense, which is not anything close to what I'm used to. I'm used to watching bottom 3 offenses week in and week out. I think I know where you're going to go with this one. And I'm prefacing it by saying I don't blame you on it. But Johnny Boy has a question for Anthony. Who is better right now, the Jets or the Bills?
It's the Buffalo Bills. I mean, I think Josh Allen is just superhuman. And I know Jets fans love to make the jokes, oh, Josh Allen, if the season ended in September, would be a perennial, MVP. I get all that. But I think that what the Bills have done so far this season is so impressive considering how much criticism they faced for their offseason moves. And I think that their defense is really good. This Jets team, I think, is still putting the pieces together. So right now it's the Bills. By the end of the season, it could be the Jets. But as we've kind of mentioned, they've had some guys working back from injuries. Whether you want to mention CJ Mosley or Mike Williams, Rodgers is still reintegrating himself in this offense. They're still figuring it out. Are they a run first team? Are they going to be a pass first team long term? We don't know. But right now the Bills are they've got it all figured out and they're firing on all cylinders. So I got to go with the Bills. But by season's end, could end up being the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you right now as well. And that's not me saying the Jets, there's no chance they could win this division. There's a chance that both teams are really good here, but Buffalo's 3-0. They put up over 30 points in every single one of these games. The defense has played a lot better the last 2 weeks, and they are just moving the ball at will right now. Allen does feel like he's the favorite to win the MVP. It's still super early in the year, and a lot can change, but I don't think saying Buffalo's the better team right now or has looked better is necessarily a negative against the Jets. And that's not to say that the Jets couldn't beat Buffalo in a few weeks. They beat them with Zach Wilson in 2023 and in 2022. I think it's going to be a good game when these two teams play. But for now, to me, Buffalo looks like the best team in the NFL currently. But we'll see how that goes the rest of this season.
I agree with you on that. I actually did my power rankings on ESM yesterday, listing the top 10 teams in the NFL, and I did put the Buffalo Bills number 1 over the Kansas City Chiefs. But you're right. It's a long season. Jets are on the upswing. They could absolutely go ahead and end up beating the Bills in a few weeks, and that whole narrative changes. And then we're talking about the Jets being Super Bowl contenders. But the one thing that I know here in this conversation about Jets, Bills, who's better, they're both a lot better than the New York Giants. So at least be happy that you are not a Giants fan right now, Johnny Boy, Matt, and everybody else.
So where did the Jets crack your top 10 list, or do we have to fist fight on the air right now?
I think they were 9 or 10. They were towards the end of it. So
that is fine. The fight's off for this week. I'm good. I'm good with that. So I've been teasing it this whole time. Again, I think this is a game the Jets get out to an early lead, and I think it bodes well for them. I'm going to say 31-6 this week. A real stinker for Denver. And again, I'll be in the building for it too. So I'm coming out for blood. I want to see the Jets get in the end zone 4 times. I want to yell and scream at Zach Wilson, all the fun things.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I'm going to go with 27-10. I think that Broncos are going to get in the end zone at some point. Whether it's Bo Nix or somebody else, they're going to get in the end zone. But I do think it's going to be a wide margin, 3-score game. Jets are going to get their points. So 27-10 is going to be my pick.
That's fair. I'll take a 17-point win. I'd be very, very happy with that score. But anyway, again, Jets looking to get to 3-1, make it 3 in a row. And they got some tough games. Well, I'm sure we'll obviously get into more of a preview a week from now. We'll recap on Monday these games, but Jets schedule gets a lot tougher after this with Minnesota, Buffalo, and the Steelers coming up after that.
Yeah, those are some tough games, especially. No, I mean, all 3 of those, really. I keep forgetting that Pittsburgh is as good as they are. I mean, they're undefeated. Their defense is the best in the NFL. And obviously, Minnesota just looks like dark horse. Never saw it coming, Super Bowl contender now. So that's a lot of fun. Shout out to Sam Darnold, New York Jets legend. Sammy D. But it also is pretty tough for the Giants as well. Both of these teams are about to embark on some really tough stretches in their schedules. The Giants have the Steelers in a couple of weeks as well. So it's going to be tough times. But, if our teams start picking up some wins, Big Apple Blitzes are going to be a lot more fun on Mondays and Thursdays.
I hope so. Hopefully another victory Monday on Monday, but that'll do it for us in this episode. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. Check out Anthony's work over on Fireside Giants and Empire Sports Media. You can find me at Matt O'Leary NY and Talking Jets. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He's Anthony. We'll catch you next time.